Hey guys, so welcome to my Trash Bash video where I will be showing you guys the paint scheme and the kit bashing technique that I used to get this Steel Legion Chimera Proxy ready for my 40k battle. So this is an APC that I bought on Temu, APC model that can be used very good as a Chimera Proxy for Warhammer 40k, for Krieg, Steel Legion, or any other guard armies that you'd like to proxy chimeras in. And I do have a product review to that, so go check that out if you'd like to. But without further ado, let's get into how I worked on this model. The first thing that I'm just going to go into briefly is the paint scheme, and I already mentioned it in my product review video of this Chimera Proxy here, but one thing that's very important when you're building this together is not to stick these pieces together here, because these tracks are much easier to paint separated. So you want to kind of put these teeth in the tracks, and then they're very easy to hold, and you can just paint them like that. It's a real breeze. And you can also hold this just like that, and it's also very easy to paint. So regarding the paint scheme, so I used a paint scheme for this Chimera that I found actually on Sonic Sledgehammer Studios YouTube channel. Really cool channel. The video in question is actually a paint scheme for a Deutsche Afrika Korps armored vehicle. So I used that paint scheme for this Chimera. I know that the Steel Legion typically have a sort of gray streaked camo design, which I didn't like that much, so I went with this one. And I'm very happy with it, actually. So there are a couple discrepancies between how I painted this model and how the guy at Sonic Sledgehammer painted his model. For one, I haven't varnished this model yet, and also in the last stage he makes kind of a sand paste that he puts all over the car, because it's supposed to be kind of a desert armored car for the African desert. I didn't want to go too far into the desert sort of design, because I mean it is on Armageddon. I'm sure they have plenty of dirt, but I didn't do the last step he has in the video with all the desert sand paste. And I also didn't use the German gray for these Lasguns that I kit bashed here. I just used Vallejo's black because I didn't really like my guns being gray. I don't know. I don't see a lot of guns in gray. So that was one difference. Another difference, obviously, in his video, it's an armored car. It has wheels. This is a tracked vehicle. So I did use German gray down here for the tracks, and then I also just dry brushed it with some lead belcher. But aside from that, another addition I did was sort of this stripe theme over here. I see a lot of people run the sort of red, white, red stripe theme here at the front of the front tracks of their armored vehicles in Warhammer. People at my club run it. It looks really good. But I didn't want to do it because, like, you know, everyone else does it. So I saw this sort of design on a Horus Heresy tank, actually. And I like this sort of corn red, darker red in the front. And then I used Black Legion in the back. So all I did was I just used some painter's tape, taped it off here, colored everything corn red, and then I taped it off again here and colored the rest Black Legion. Took about 2 coats with the Black Legion because it's a contrast. And then in terms of the decals, these decals I just actually took from a Space Marine decal sheet. They're very easy to get. These two here, and then this one right here, just kind of the 8 and the eagle. And then I also got some additional decals from a friend of mine who collects Imperial Guard. But if you didn't have these sort of decals, I don't think it would matter too much. I'm actually kind of thinking, I'm not sure, feel free to tell me what you think, but I actually feel like it kind of looks better without the Steel Legion decals, so let me know what you think. You don't necessarily need them. The two kind of tones of red maybe don't vibe together as well, so you can absolutely also just leave them out, and it'll look pretty sweet, just with this sort of Space Marine decals, which are very easy to get. But without further ado, let's get into the kitbash section of this video. So what I'm going to show you guys now is how to make these heavy bolters, one for the turret and one down here for the hull. Now, my preferred way to do it is to build it out of these heavy bolt pistols that you can get with assault intercessors and normal intercessors. I find I always have these lying around. And if you, for whatever reason, don't have any of these, feel free to ask at your local club if people have any heavy bolt pistols laying around. Literally everybody, I mean, almost everybody has. If you play Space Marines, you're always going to have these heavy bolt pistols laying around somewhere. And of course, you could also use a bolt gun, you know, any other type of bolt gun, but I prefer to use these because I don't really need them. So I like to use them like this. And I think they have a cool look, you know, in terms of a heavy bolter. Looks pretty nice. And also important to mention, you're going to need 4 heavy bolt guns, perhaps a little bit of putty, obviously super glue of your choice. You could just glue these bolt guns in, or you could magnetize them if you want to swap them out. I'm going to show you guys how to do that. And you're going to need your trusty clipper as well. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to do with my heavy bolt pistols here is just to cut them at the wrist, because that's going to let me able to get a better vantage point to cut from. So just remove the arm. We can use the arm later for something. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 2 ways. First, I'm going to cut in here to cut the top of the hand out. And then I'm just going to cut a little bit here to get the little finger on the finger guard out. Just like so. Again, this part of the gun will be kind of inside of the tank, so you're not really going to see it. So it doesn't matter if it's too uneven. And then you're going to have kind of a sort of rectangular shape as well. You could, of course, cut off the magazine, but I think the magazine looks kind of cool. It just looks like part of the tank, you know, part of the gun. It doesn't really look like a magazine when it's all painted up. And obviously you're going to want to do that for all 4 of your heavy bolt guns, just cutting at the wrist and then cutting a rectangle out where the hand is. So since we want to stick our 2 cut pieces together, like so, on one of them we're going to have to cut off this little protruding bit. I'm not sure what it's called, a receiver or something. Cut off this little piece right here. Now these 2 pieces fit snugly together. So you can take your super glue of choice and just stick those together and make sure that they align well, or else they're going to look a little bit strange. So as you can see here, I've added a smaller magnet to the bottom of this little gap here. And then I've pasted the top of the magnet into this sort of rectangular space that we've created. And that will just allow for our heavy bolter to fit into the turret quite well. And the thing is, guys, you don't even really need to magnetize it. It's such a snug fit. It'll fit in there without a magnet, so you don't really even need to magnetize it, but there you go. And it should just be briefly mentioned that you can obviously also make this kind of heavy bolter if you want a flamer out of 2 flamer pistols, like so, but you are going to want to cut off these cylindrical, these kind of containers down here, because otherwise these pieces are not going to fit together as well. So let's move on to the hull mount. So we have our other bolter that we've created here. And the thing about the hull mount is, in terms of these magnets I have here, these are They're about 1 millimeter thick, 4 millimeters wide. It has the perfect size to stack all 3 of them, a sort of stack of 3. Now, if we wanted to do the same thing with our heavy bolter and put it in the same way, it's not going to fit. I mean, you could cut off the magazine. It's kind of showing up. You could cut off the magazine and then it would fit in here. But I decided just to kind of put it in sideways. And that way you can kind of turn it around like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our stack of 3 magnets and we're just going to take the bottom one, just take it off, the bottom one. Make sure you've noted which side, okay? So this way facing up. And we are going to glue this into that corner right over here that I showed you guys. So get a bit of glue. So there we go. We got a bit of glue in there. And now we can just pop in our 1 single magnet, kind of adjust it there, push it in. This glue does dry pretty quickly. But there you go. That's where it should be. And now what you want to do is you really want to let it dry. Now this glue I have here, it dries in about 1 minute. I'm going to leave it here for maybe 3 minutes, and then we're going to continue with the rest of the magnets. And so the next thing we can do is just take our last heavy bolter here and put a little glue in there in that rectangular shape we've created. So you can see I put some glue there, and we're just going to put our 2 top magnets at the top of the gun, leaving a little gap at the bottom. This can be a bit tricky. You don't want to get too much glue on your fingers, but I've placed it quite well. There you can see there's a little gap at the bottom for the magnet inside of the hole there, and just let that dry, and then it should snap right in. So now that that has dried nicely, we can see that it pops into the Chimera Proxy quite well. And you can even kind of turn it around like that. And that is the magnetization done for our heavy bolter at the bottom and at the top. Okay guys, so let's briefly just magnetize the multilaser as well. So you can see our bolter is magnetized, everything fits in there quite well. And we're going to have to just cut off this back piece for the magnetization to work, because otherwise it's not going to fit in there. But it's pretty easy. We're just going to cut off about this much, just leave a little bit at the front, and that cuts off very, very easily. And as you can see, it's going to fit in much better now, like so. And I'm going to just put a hamburger stack of my 4 millimeter wide magnets in there. If you have some smaller magnets, that would probably be better, because then it doesn't protrude out as much. But I'm going to just use this stack right here, and I'm just going to glue it or silly putty it in like that, so it just snaps in, and there's a little space down there for the bottom magnet. You could also just use one magnet and put some putty here at the top instead, but I'm just going to use this stack. I'm going to use some putty to secure that, because it's a bit difficult with the glue. So we're just going to take some putty and mix it up. And so you can see I just used a little bit of putty there to secure my magnet hamburger on there. And just like that, it fits quite snugly in to my turret. I can even kind of rotate it around like that. So that magnetization part is finito. So now that we have our heavy bolters, we are going to want to make our stubber. And for our stubber, we're just going to use one of these empty Bic ink cartridges. So you just take this out of your Bic pen, and then you're going to have one of these. And we are going to measure just about 3 centimeters. That's what we're going to do. We're going to have measure just about 3 centimeters and clip it right about there with our clipper. You want to make sure it doesn't go flying, so do point it in a good direction. There we go. Push it out a bit so it keeps its round shape. So there we are. Now what I've done is I've just kind of poked some small holes on either side. I only poked holes on the left and the right side, but you could also put some holes kind of at the top. It's up to you. But I thought I would do it quick and dirty. After all, it is TRASHBASH. So I'm just going to take my protractor here. You can also use a needle, but I'm just going to kind of eyeball it quick and dirty and just punch a couple holes from one side and then down all the way through. And I'm going to go to make sure it comes out on the other side. I'm going to go to the other side and find that hole I made. And just do that all the way down with a nice even space between each hole. You could measure it and mark it with a pencil, but I like to imagine that these stubbers were built or assembled when orcs were storming through the factory in Armageddon during the second Armageddon War, the second War of Armageddon. So they had to punch these holes quite quickly, and as we know, the Empire doesn't like too much automation. So I like to imagine that there were some very nervous workers maybe operating the punching machines for these. So, you know, some of the holes are somewhat out of place. Blame it at the enemy at the gates. So there is our stubber complete. And now the final step is just to attach it here to the turret. So we're going to want to remove our heavy bolter for that. It's just going to make it a bit easier. And you want to kind of look again if that cut is even. If it's a bit uneven, we want to even it out a bit. Just give it another snip. Now we're just going to take a bit of putty. And again, you can see the putty here. I mean, you could say, for instance, that it's leather, you know? I mean, in World War II, they many times had these sort of machine guns poking out of the turrets in different places, kind of with a leather encasing here. Or you could just say it was welded on. I mean, I think that's the way I'm going to go with it, but just kind of a welded on heavy stubber. Probably safer if the heavy stubber is welded into the turret than if someone's operating it on the outside. So that's what we're going to go with. And then just kind of mix your putty together. So that is about ready to go. And now what we can do is we can just take a bit of that putty. Probably aren't going to need all of this, but have some at the ready. And we're just going to place it on our tank, and we can just kind of, there you go, smush our heavy stubber in like so. You want to make sure it's straight, and then you can start kind of forming it. I like to use these kind of Bic pen caps to form it into place. So yeah, when you're done kind of forming it, you just want to make sure that it's straight before you leave it to rest. So that is very, very much straight, very ready to go. and ready to shoot some orcs. So you just let it dry now for a day. And then that is your turret completed with both the heavy bolter and the stubber. And now we are going to create a Lasgun array for our Chimera here. We're gonna try and make sure that the dimensions are the same as for the GW Chimera. So what we are going to need are kind of some blisters. So this is Tonzapret, something I got when I had a pretty bad cough. And you probably have some of these lying around, and these are the perfect size to kind of make that little cupola, that little turret around these little raised areas to create our kind of Lasgun array turret thingy. So we're going to need about 6 of these blisters. We're going to need a couple of Q-tips, some putty, something to measure with, and some scissors and or a clipper. I like to use both. But without further ado, let's get started. So first things first, you kind of want to make sure that these don't have too many indentations on them. If they do, you know, these kind of medicine blisters, they do, it's not really too much an issue because, I mean, it's a Chimera, you know, it's kind of been weathered. But what you want to do is you want to kind of not kind of cut into any of these blisters. Always cut around them. Even if you kind of veer towards one of the blisters, these plastic sheets are very brittle. And it can cause kind of cracks. Like even here, it's a bit risky. So you kind of first want to isolate the blister. You want to cut like so. Cut it off. And then I like to use my clippers to just kind of clip off all the end bits here. And these little plastic pieces will go flying around everywhere. So if you have a dedicated hobby area or some kind of vacuum robot, you know, that is always very, very helpful because these things will go flying everywhere. And then there you go. That's what it should look like. And just make 6 of those and then we're ready for the next step. Okay, so next up we are going to get our putty out. And here we are going to mix up our putty. And then we're going to glue our 6 blisters onto the Chimera, or the Proxy Chimera rather. Then we're just going to take our little blister, put that in there. You see, it doesn't have to fill up the entire blister. It should just kind of be enough to hold on to the surface here. If there's any bits of plastic, kind of strings of plastic from the 3D printing that you want to get rid of, you should probably do that beforehand. But then you just cover the porthole like that, like so. And you just push it on and you're ready to go. So the next step is to get our Q-tip out. And what you want to do is you want to pull off all of this cotton from the Q-tip. In fact, this is why I like to use the clippers. It goes a bit faster with the clippers. Obviously, if you have something else that isn't a Q-tip, you know, that's kind of long and cylindrical and can kind of represent a lasgun, you can also use that, but I like to use Q-tips. So the next thing we want to do is we want to cut our Q-tip to make the barrels for the lasgun array. So what you want to do is you just want to measure for each of your lasguns. So that's also why clippers are good. They kind of get that nice clean cut. But you can see they kind of push the ends into each other. And you want to kind of push them out so you do have that circular gun barrel kind of look. Also here, it's going to be a lot better to glue onto your little cupola piece there later on. if you push it together. So, and the next step is essentially just to glue these onto each other to create your lasgun. So just put a bit of glue there. And there you go. It's nice and glued together. So when that dries, we can move to the next step. And here, you kind of want to be a bit careful. And what you want is you want like the perfect diagonal line so that your lasgun array is kind of poking out horizontally. You can raise it up a little bit, but the issue is if you raise it up too much, then you will have this problem right here, which is essentially that, well, your turret will not be able to pass through because your lasgun is raised. So if you don't mind that, it's fine, but I like to be able to rotate my turret around. So I do want to kind of get a nice horizontal looking lasgun here. So let's just take the turret off and kind of look. So we're going to want to kind of cut just across like so. Just kind of use your thumb, mark it down, mark the angle down you want to cut, and then take your clippers and go for it. Okay. Again, we've kind of smushed these barrels in a bit, so kind of push it back out. And then you can try again. And I am very happy with that. You see, it's raised up a little bit, which is fine. I don't mind it being raised up a little bit, but it's not going to block the turret like that. Yeah, smooth sailing, just about smooth sailing. Not going to hit the turret. And so in the next step, we can just glue on our lasgun. So I am using a really great glue. It's called Uhu Sekundenkleber. You can get it here in Germany. This stuff dries really, really fast. So you kind of just have to hold it here for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Look, it's already there, not even 30 seconds. But you can see this piece is already stuck on. And if you put enough glue, that thing is going to hold very well. The one thing that can happen is that these pieces, that this kind of putty doesn't hold all that well. But that's okay, because if it doesn't hold well, if these kind of pieces do fall off, you just use a very strong glue like this to glue them on, and then they will stay on. And that is basically it. So you can basically continue, make the rest of your 5 lasgun arrays, and you've got your lasgun array sorted. So just briefly, I'd also like to show you guys what you can do with the flamer that comes with this model. As I did mention in my product review video of this model, it doesn't actually fit into this hole here, but as you can see, we've magnetized it so that our kind of heavy bolter at the bottom fits right in. And we can do the same thing with this heavy flamer. Just cut off the back, put 2 magnets on it. It's a bit tricky to get these to stick. I used some putty to get them to stick. And then use some glue afterwards to harden it, and they can just pop in like that. And as you can see, it fits in very well. Just pops right in. You just have to kind of cut off this back bit. It's very easy with some clippers, and just stick these in the back. And then that is done as well. Anyway, let's get to the final addition to our Chimera, which is the Hunter Killer. So I like to build these little Hunter Killer rockets out of big pens, basically. I have a video on how to do that, so I'm not going to show you how to do that here. If you do want to see that video, you can look in the video description. But I was kind of thinking about where I would place this Hunter Killer on the Chimera, because if we place it up here, it would be a little bit bigger. I mean, excluding the antenna, it would be a little bit bigger in profile than the Chimera. If you look, it's almost identical in height, you know. The dimensions, the scale is really good. So I didn't really want to put it up here because you've got these two hatches. I mean, you wouldn't really have a Chimera on one of the hatches. Another idea was to kind of place it back here. But again, like I don't really see the rocket like, you know, flying out and then not hitting this turret, especially when it's like placed like this. So I didn't really see any option to put it back here. You know, if you put it here, the turret is gonna kind of hit it when it swings around. And as you can see with the Lasgun array, I like to have the turret be able to totally swing around. And so the perfect place I found to put this hunter-killer is just right in front of this rectangle here you see. If you put it on the rectangle, it is going to bump the turret, but if you put it just in front, and you have the same build I do with the stubber and these two heavy bolt pistols as your heavy bolter, it can clear it quite well. That is, of course, if you use all the dimensions that I use when building my hunter-killers. You'd have to check the video for that. But if you build it like that and you place it just in front of this rectangle, the turret can clear it. And it's kind of a cool place to put it, you know, right up in front with all the other guns. Looks kind of fully loaded. So that's what we're going to do. Next, we're going to take our super strong glue from Uhu, who unfortunately do not sponsor me, but they do make the best glue that I've ever used. Ready in seconds. There we go. You probably don't want to use quite as much as I have. I use quite a bit there, but that's why God invented Q-tips, I guess. Okay, so I've put a little bit of glue here. You're going to take the bottom magnet away and make sure it's facing the right way. And then you're just going to want to place it right there on the glue. And you might want to actually hold it there because I have found that it can kind of try and fly off. If you've magnetized this heavy bolter down here, it can kind of try and fly off and try and magnetize with the heavy bolter magnet down here. So, but it's already taken. It's nice and secure. And now I can just place my hunter-killer and it's ready to go. Okay guys, so that is how you kitbash this. If you did like this video, consider liking and subscribing for more kitbashes I do. And I hope to see you guys next time.